Sunni and Shia Islam are the two major denominations of Islam. The demographic breakdown between the two denominations is difficult to assess and varies by source, but a good approximation is that 85 to 90% of the world's Muslims are Sunni and 10 to 15% are Shia, with most Shias belonging to the Twelver tradition and the rest divided between many other groups. Sunnis are a majority in most Muslim communities, in Southeast Asia, China, South Asia, Africa, and most of the Arab world. Shia make up the majority of the citizen population in Iraq, Iran, Azerbaijan, and Bahrain, as well as being a politically significant minority in Lebanon. Azerbaijan is predominantly Shia, however, practicing adherents are much fewer. Indonesia has the largest number of Sunni Muslims, while Iran has the largest number of Shia Muslims in the world. Pakistan has the second largest Sunni as well as the second largest Shia Muslim population in the world. The historic background of the Sunni-Shia split lies in the schism that occurred when the Islamic prophet Muhammad died in the year 632, leading to a dispute over succession to Muhammad as a caliph of the Islamic community spread across various parts of the world, which led to the Battle of Siffin. The dispute intensified greatly after the Battle of Karbala, in which Hussein ibn Ali and his household were killed by the ruling Umayyad Caliph Yazid I, and the outcry for revenge divided the early Islamic community. Today, there are differences in religious practice, traditions, and customs, often related to jurisprudence. Although all Muslim groups consider the Quran to be divine, Sunni and Shia have different opinions on hadith. In recent years, Sunni-Shia relations have been increasingly marked by conflict, particularly the Iran-Saudi Arabia proxy conflict. Sectarian violence persists to this day from Pakistan to Yemen and is a major element of friction throughout the Middle East. Tensions between communities have intensified during past struggles, such as the Bahraini uprising, the Iraq War, and most recently the Syrian civil war, and in the formation of the self-styled Islamic State of Iraq and Syria that has launched a genocide against Shias. Numbers. Sunnis are a majority in most Muslim communities in Southeast Asia, China, South Asia, Africa, most of the Arab world, and among Muslims in the United States. This can also be confusing because of the fact that the majority of Arab Muslims in the United States are Shia, while the majority of Arab Americans are Christians, the conflation of Arab and Muslim being quite common. Shias make up the majority of the Muslim population in Iran, Azerbaijan, Iraq, and Bahrain. Minority communities are also found in Yemen, where over 45% of the population are Shia, according to the UNHCR. Others put the numbers of Shias at 30%. About 15 to 20% of Turkey's population belong to the Alevi sect. The Shia constitute around 30 to 40% of Kuwait, 45 to 55% of the Muslim population in Lebanon, 25% of Saudi Arabia, 12% of Syria, and 20 to 25% of Pakistan. Around 15 to 20% of Afghanistan, less than 6% of the Muslims in Nigeria, and around 5% of population of Tajikistan are Shia. Shias are about 25 to 30% of the entire Muslim world. We don't have accurate statistics because in much of the Middle East it is not convenient to have them for ruling regimes in particular, but the estimates are that they are about 25 to 30% of the Muslim world, which puts them somewhere between 185 and 215 million people. The overwhelming majority of that population lives between Pakistan and Lebanon. Iran always had been a Shia country, the largest one, with a population of about 70 million. Pakistan is the second largest Shia country in the world, with about 30 million population. Also potentially, there are as many Shias in India as there are in Iraq. Historical beliefs and leadership. Successors of Muhammad. Sunnis believe that Abu Bakr, the father of Muhammad's wife Aisha, was Muhammad's rightful successor, and that the method of choosing or electing leaders endorsed by the Quran is the consensus of the Ummah. Shias believe that Muhammad divinely ordained his cousin and son-in-law Ali ibn Abi Talib in accordance with the command of God to be the next caliph, making Ali and his direct descendants Muhammad's successors. Shias believe that Muhammad quoted this in Hadith of the Pond of Qum. Ali was married to Fatima, Muhammad's daughter, by his wife Khadija bint Khuwaylid. Aisha endorsed her father Abu Bakr as the successor to Muhammad. It is important to note that Ali ibn Abi Talib never raised any claim to caliphate himself, and remained totally loyal to all the three caliphs elected before him. Sunnis follow the Rashidun, rightly guided caliphs, who were the first four caliphs who ruled after the death of Muhammad: Abu Bakr, Umar ibn al-Khattab, Uthman ibn Affan, and the aforementioned Ali ibn Abi Talib. After the third caliph Uthman ibn Affan was assassinated by some revolters, Ali ibn Abi Talib was elected as the fourth caliph. Ali, being more concerned about restoring peace in the land, stayed back from taking any immediate action against the assassins of the previous caliph, Uthman. In the Battle of the Camel, Aisha opposed her step-son-in-law Ali outside the city of Basra, because she wanted justice on the assassins of the previous caliph, Uthman. Aisha's forces were defeated and Muhammad's widow was respectfully escorted back to Medina. Shia theology discounts the legitimacy of the first three caliphs and believes that Ali is the second most divinely inspired man, and that he and his descendants by Fatima, the Imams, are the sole legitimate Islamic leaders. The imamate of the Shia encompasses far more of a prophetic function than the caliphate of the Sunnis. Unlike Sunni, Shias believe special spiritual qualities have been granted not only to Muhammad but also to Ali and the other Imams. 12ers believe the Imams are immaculate from sin and human error, and can understand and interpret the hidden inner meaning of the teachings of Islam. In this way the Imams are trustees who bear the light of Muhammad. The Mahdi is the prophesied redeemer of Islam. While Shias and Sunnis differ on the nature of the Mahdi, many members of both groups, especially Sufis, believe that the Mahdi will appear at the end of the world to bring about a perfect and just Islamic society. In Shia Islam, the Mahdi symbol has developed into a powerful and central religious idea. 12ers believe the Mahdi will be Muhammad al-Mahdi, the 12th Imam returned from the occultation, where he has been hidden by God since 874. In contrast, mainstream Sunnis believe the Mahdi will be named Muhammad, be a descendant of Muhammad, and will revive the faith, but will not necessarily be connected with the end of the world. Hadith. The Shias accept some of the same hadiths used by Sunnis as part of the Sunnah to argue the case. In addition, they consider the sayings of Ahl al-Bayt that are not attributed directly to Muhammad as hadiths. Shias do not accept many Sunni hadiths unless they are also recorded in Shia sources of the methodology can be proven of how they were recorded. Also, some Sunni accepted hadith are less favored by Shias. One example is that because of Aisha's opposition to Ali, hadiths narrated by Aisha are not given the same authority as those by other companions. Another example is hadith narrated by Abu Hurairah, who is considered by Shias as the enemy of Ali. The Shia argument is that Abu Hurairah was only a Muslim 4 years of his life before Muhammad's death. Although he accompanied Muhammad for 4 years only, he managed to record 10 times as many hadiths as Abu Bakr and Ali each. Shiism and Sufism. Shiism and Sufism are said to share a number of hallmarks: belief in an inner meaning to the Quran, special status for some mortals, as well as veneration of Ali and Muhammad's family. Pillars of faith. The 5 pillars of Islam is the term given to the 5 duties incumbent on every Muslim. These duties are Shahada, Salat, Zakat, Sawm and Hajj. These 5 practices are essential to Sunni and Shia Muslims. Shia theology has 2 concepts that define religion as a whole. There are roots of religion and branches of religion. Practices. Many distinctions can be made between Sunnis and Shias through observation alone. Salat. When prostrating during ritual prayer, Shias place the forehead onto a piece of naturally occurring material, most often a clay tablet, soil at times from Karbala, the place where Hussein ibn Ali was martyred, instead of directly onto a prayer rug. There is precedence for this in Sunni thought too, as it is recommended to prostrate on earth, or upon something that grows from the earth. Some Shia perform prayers back to back, sometimes worshipping 2 times consecutively, thus praying 5 times a day but with a very small break in between the prayer, a tradition followed by Muslims all over the world while performing Hajj. Instead of 5 prayers with at least 1 hour gap between them as required by Sunni schools of law, Shias and the followers of the Sunni Maliki school hold their hands at the sides during prayer. Sunnis of other schools cross their arms and clasp the hands. It is commonly held by Sunni scholars, especially of Maliki school, that either is acceptable. Muta and Misu. 12. A Shia permit nikah muta, fixed-term temporary marriage, which is not acceptable within the Sunni community. The Ismaili Shia of the Zaydi Shia and is believed a planned and agreed fornication. 12ers believe that muta was permitted until Umar forbade it during his rule. Muta is not the same as misu marriage or afi marriage, which has no date of expiration and is permitted by some Sunnis. A misu marriage differs from a conventional Islamic marriage in that the man does not have financial responsibility over the woman by her own free will. The man can divorce the woman whenever he wants to in a misu marriage. Hijab and dress. Both Sunni and Shia women wear the hijab. Devout women of the Shia traditionally wear black and yellow, as do some Sunni women in the Gulf. Some Shia religious leaders also wear a black robe. Mainstream Shia and Sunni women wear the hijab differently. Some Sunni scholars emphasize covering of all body including the face in public, whereas some scholars exclude the face from hijab. Shias believe that the hijab must cover around the perimeter of the face and up to the chin. Like Sunnis, some Shia women, such as those in Iran and Iraq, use the hand to hold a black chador in order to cover the faces when in public. Given names. Shia are sometimes recognizable by the names, which are often derived from the names of Ahl al-Bayt. In particular, the names Fatima, Zainab, Ali, Abbas, Hussein, and Hassan are disproportionately common among Shias, though they may also be used by Sunnis. Umar, Uthman, Abu Bakr, Aisha, Muawiyah, being the names of figures recognized by Sunnis but not Shias, are commonly used as names for Sunnis but are very rare, if not virtually absent, for Shias. History. Abbasid era. The Umayyads were overthrown in 750 by a new dynasty, the Abbasids. The first Abbasid caliph, as-Saffar, recruited Shia support in his campaign against the Umayyads by emphasizing his blood relationship to Muhammad's household through descent from his uncle, Abbas ibn Abd al-Muttalib. The Shia also believed that he promised them that the caliphate, or at least religious authority, would be vested in the Shia imam. As Safar assumed both the temporal and religious mantle of caliph himself, he continued the Umayyad dynastic practice of succession, and his brother al-Mansur succeeded him in 754. Jafar al-Sadiq, the sixth Shia Imam, died during al-Mansur's reign, and the work claims that he was murdered on the orders of the caliph. Shia sources further claim that by the orders of the 10th Abbasid caliph, al-Mutawakkil, the tomb of the third Imam, Hussein ibn Ali in Karbala, was completely demolished, and Shias were sometimes beheaded in groups, buried alive, or even placed alive within the walls of government buildings still under construction. The Shia believed that their community continued to live for the most part in hiding and followed the religious life secretly without external manifestations. Shia Sunni in Iraq. Many Shia Iranians migrated to what is now Iraq in the 16th century. It is said that when modern Iraq was formed, some of the population of Karbala was Iranian. In time, these immigrants adopted the Arabic language and Arab identity, but their origin has been used to unfairly cast them as Lakis of Iran. Other Iraqi Shias are ethnic Arabs with roots in Iraq as deep as those of the Sunni counterparts. Shia Sunni in Persia. Shafi'i Sunnism was the dominant form of Islam in most of Iran until rise of the Safavid Empire, although a significant undercurrent of Ismailism and a very large minority of Twelvers were present all over Persia. The Sunni hegemony did not undercut the Shia presence in Iran. The writers of the Shia four books were Iranian, as were many other great scholars. According to Mortaza Motahari, the majority of Iranians turned to Shiism from the Safavid period onwards. Of course, it cannot be denied that Iran's environment was more favorable to the flourishing of the Shiism as compared to all other parts of the Muslim world. Shiism did not penetrate any land to the extent that it gradually could in Iran. With the passage of time, Iranians' readiness to practice Shiism grew day by day. Had Shi'ism not been deeply rooted in the Iranian spirit, the Safavids would not have succeeded in converting Iranians to the Shia creed and making them follow the Prophet al-Bayt Shi'ili by capturing political power. The Shia in Persia before the Safavids. The domination of the Sunni creed during the first 9 Islamic centuries characterizes the religious history of Iran during this period. There were, however, some exceptions to this general domination which emerged in the form of the Zaydis of Tabaristan, the Buwayhid, the rule of the Sultan Muhammad Qutbandar, and the Sabedaran. Nevertheless, apart from this domination there existed, firstly, throughout these 9 centuries, Shia inclinations among many Sunnis of this land, and, secondly, Twelver and Zaydi Shiism had prevalence in some parts of Iran. During this period, the Shia in Iran were nourished from Kufa, Baghdad, and later from Najaf and al-Hilla. Shia were dominant in Tabaristan, Kashan, Avaj and Sabzeva. In many other areas the population of Shias and Sunni was mixed. The first Zaydi state was established in Daylaman and Tabaristan in 864 by the Alavids. It lasted until the death of its leader at the hand of the Samanids in 928. Roughly 40 years later the state was revived in Gilan and survived under Hassanid leaders until 1126. After which, from the 12th–13th centuries, the Zaydis of Daylaman, Gilan and Tabaristan then acknowledged the Zaydi Imams of Yemen, rival Zaydi Imams within Iran. The Buyids, who were Zaydi and had a significant influence not only in the provinces of Persia but also in the capital of the Caliphate in Baghdad, and even upon the Caliph himself, provided a unique opportunity for the spread and diffusion of Shia thought. This spread of Shiism to the inner circles of the government enabled the Shia to withstand those who opposed them by relying upon the power of the Caliphate. Twelvers came to Iran from Arab regions in the course of 4 stages. First, through the Asharis tribe at the end of the 7th and during the 8th century. Second, through the pupils of Sabzeva, and especially those of al-Sheikh al-Mufid, who were from Ray and Sabzawa and resided in those cities. Third, through the school of Hilla under the leadership of al-Hili and his son Faqih al-Muhaqqiqin. Fourth, through the scholars of Jabal Amal residing in the region, or in Iraq, during the 16th and 17th centuries, who later migrated to Iran. On the other hand, the Ismaili Dawah sent missionaries during the Fatimid Caliphate to Persia. When the Ismailis divided into 2 sects, Nazaris established the base in northern Persia. Hassan I Sabah conquered fortresses and captured Alamat in 1090. Nazaris used this fortress until the Mongols finally seized and destroyed it in 1256. After the Mongols and the fall of the Abbasids, the Sunni ulama suffered greatly. In addition to the destruction of the caliphate, there was no official Sunni school of law. Many libraries and madrasas were destroyed and Sunni scholars migrated to other Islamic areas such as Anatolia and Egypt. In contrast, most Shia were largely unaffected as the center was not in Iran at this time. For the first time, the Shia could openly convert other Muslims to the movement. Several local Shia dynasties like the Mirashi and Sabadas were established during this time. The kings of the Karakoyunlu dynasty ruled in Tabriz with a domain extending to Fars and Kumin. In Egypt, the Fatimid government ruled. Muhammad Qutb, the famous builder of Sultaniya, was among the first of the Mongols to convert to Shiaism, and his descendants ruled for many years in Persia and were instrumental in spreading Shia thought. Sufism played a major role in spread of Shiism in this time. After the Mongol invasion, Shias and Sufism once again formed a close association in many ways. Some of the Ismailis, whose power had broken by the Mongols, went underground and appeared later within Sufi orders or as new branches of already existing orders. In 12 Imam Shiism, for the 13th to the 16th century, Sufism began to grow within official Shiite circles. The extremist sects of the Harifis and Shasha grew directly out of a background that is both Shiite and Sufi. More important in the long run than these sects were the Sufi orders, which spread in Persia at this time and aided in preparing the ground for the Shiite movement of Safavids. 2 of these orders are of particular significance in this question of the relation of Shiism and Sufism: the Ni'matullahi order and Nurbakhshi order. Shiism in Persia after Safavids. Ismail I initiated a religious policy to recognize Shiism as the official religion of the Safavid Empire, and the fact that modern Iran and Azerbaijan remain officially Shia states is a direct result of Ismail's actions. Unfortunately for Ismail, most of his subjects were Sunni. He thus had to enforce official Shiism violently, putting to death those who opposed him. Under this pressure, Safavid subjects either converted or pretended to convert, but it is safe to say that the majority of the population was probably genuinely Shia by the end of the Safavid period in the 18th century, and most Iranians today are Shia, although there is still a Sunni minority. Immediately following the establishment of Safavid power, the migration of scholars began and they were invited to Iran. By the side of the immigration of scholars, Shia works and writings were also brought to Iran from Arabic-speaking lands, and they performed an important role in the religious development of Iran. In fact, since the time of the leadership of Sheikh Mufid and Sheikh Tusi, Iraq had a central academic position for Shiism. This central position was transferred to Iran during the Safavid era for 2.5 centuries, after which it partly returned to Najaf. Before the Safavid era, Shia manuscripts were mainly written in Iraq. With the establishment of the Safavid rule, these manuscripts were transferred to Iran. This led to a wide gap between Iran and its Sunni neighbors, particularly its rival, the Ottoman Empire, in the wake of the Battle of Chaldiran. This gap continued until the 20th century. Shia Sunni in Levant Shias claimed that despite these advances, many Shias in Syria continued to be killed during this period for the faith. One of these was Muhammad ibn Makki, called Shahid Awal, one of the great figures in Shia jurisprudence, who was killed in Damascus in 1384. Shahab al-Din Suhrawardi was another eminent scholar, killed in Aleppo in charges of cultivating Batini teachings and philosophy. Shia-Sunni in South Asia. Sunni-Shia clashes also occurred occasionally in the 20th century in South Asia. There were many between 1904 and 1908. These clashes revolve around the public cursing of the first three caliphs by Shias and the praising of them by Sunnis. To put a stop to the violence, public demonstrations were banned in 1909 on the three most sensitive days: Ashura, Chelem and Ali's death on 21 Ramadan. Intercommunal violence resurfaced in 1935–36 and again in 1939 when many thousands of Sunni and Shias defied the ban on public demonstrations and took to the streets. Shia are estimated to be 21–35% of the Muslim population in South Asia, although the total number is difficult to estimate due to the intermingling between the two groups and practice of taqiyya by Shia Sunni razzias, which came to be known as Taraj, virtually devastated the community. History records 10 such Taraj, also known as Taraji Shia, between the 15th and 19th centuries in 1548, 1585, 1635, 1686, 1719, 1741, 1762, 1801, 1830, 1872, during which the Shia habitations were plundered, people slaughtered, libraries burned and the sacred sites desecrated. Shia-Sunni relations in the Mughal Empire. Shia in South Asia faced persecution by some Sunni rulers and Mughal emperors, which resulted in the killings of Shia scholars like Qazi Nurullah Shastari and Mirza Muhammad Kamal Dehlevi, who are two of the 5 martyrs of Shia Islam. Shias in Kashmir in subsequent years had to pass through the most atrocious period of their history.